Queen Valara stood at the great window of her throne room and watched the human ship approach. It was a small vessel, simple in design, nothing like the massive warships of the Kishan Empire. She felt disappointment already growing in her chest. For 300 years, her people had ruled this sector of the galaxy. They were tall, strong, and proud. Their skin was the color of pale silver, and their eyes glowed soft blue in the darkness. The Keshan were warriors. They respected strength above all things, but the war with the human Galactic Federation had changed everything. The humans were new to space travel, barely 2 centuries among the stars. Yet they had fought the Keshan to a standstill, not through strength or advanced weapons, but through sheer stubbornness. They simply refused to die. They refused to surrender. They kept coming, wave after wave, until even the proud Kishan grew tired of the endless blood, so a peace treaty was signed. And as part of that treaty, Valara was required to take a human consort, a political marriage to symbolize unity between their species. She hated the idea. The doors of the throne room opened, and her chief advisor, Lord Baron, walked in. He was old, with deep lines on his silver face, but his mind was still sharp as a blade. "The human ship is docked, Your Majesty," he said. "Your future consort will be presented within the hour." Valara turned from the window. "Tell me again why I must do this." "Because we lost, Your Majesty. Not on the battlefield, but in resources. Our economy cannot survive another decade of war. The humans know this. They offered peace, but they demanded a symbol, something the galaxy would see and remember. So they sent me a husband," Valara said bitterly. "Like I am some prize to be claimed." "No, Your Majesty. They send you a partner. The humans see marriage differently than we do. To them, it is about equality, about standing together." Valara laughed without humor. "And what kind of partner do they send? Some great human general? A famous warrior? A hero of their people?" Lord Baron was quiet for a moment. "His name is Kang Teho. He is a diplomat, a scholar of some kind. He requested to bring books and seeds with him." "Books and seeds," Valara repeated. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "They mock us, Baron. They send us a gardener." 1 hour later, Valara sat upon her throne as the human delegation entered the great hall. Keshan nobles lined the walls, their blue eyes watching with curiosity and contempt. Whispers filled the air like the hissing of snakes. The human guards came first, wearing simple armor that looked primitive compared to Kishan designs. Then came the diplomats, men and women in formal clothing. And finally, walking alone at the back, came the man she was meant to marry. Kang Teho was not what she expected. He was shorter than the Kishan, as all humans were. His skin was warm brown, and his black hair was neatly combed. He wore simple dark robes with no decorations, no medals, no signs of rank. His face was calm, almost gentle, with kind eyes that seemed to carry a quiet sadness. He walked with no arrogance, no pride. He simply walked forward and stopped before the throne. Then he bowed deeply, a gesture of respect. "Queen Valara," he said. His voice was soft but clear. "Thank you for receiving me. I hope I can be worthy of the trust your people have placed in this union." The nobles whispered louder. Some laughed behind their hands. Valara studied him carefully. This was the man the humans had sent? This quiet, gentle creature with his books and his seeds? He looked like he had never held a weapon in his life. He looked like a scholar, a poet, someone who spent his days reading in quiet libraries. "Rise," she commanded. He rose and met her eyes. There was no fear in his gaze, no nervousness, just calm acceptance, like the surface of still water. "You are to be my consort," Valara said. "Do you understand what that means?" "I do, Your Majesty. You will live in my palace. You will attend court functions. You will represent the bond between our peoples. But you will have no power here. No authority. You are a symbol, nothing more." If her words hurt him, he did not show it. He simply nodded. "I understand. I did not come seeking power. Then what did you come seeking?" He was quiet for a moment. Then a small smile touched his lips. "Peace," he said. "Just peace." The wedding ceremony took place 3 days later. It was a grand affair, broadcast across the galaxy. Valara wore the ceremonial armor of the Keshan queens, a magnificent suit of silver and blue that had been worn by her mother and her mother's mother before her. Teho wore simple human formal robes, looking small beside her. The nobles sneered. The court mocked him in whispers. They called him the gardener consort and made jokes about how the queen had married a pet. Valara tried to ignore her disappointment. She had dreamed once of marrying a great warrior, someone who could stand beside her as an equal, someone who would make her enemies tremble. Instead, she had this quiet man who spent his first evening in the palace requesting a small plot of land for a garden. "A garden?" she asked when the servants brought her his request. "Yes, Your Majesty. Just a small one. I brought seeds from Earth, flowers that my mother used to grow." Valara approved the request, mostly to avoid arguing with him. Let him have his flowers. Let him play in the dirt. At least it would keep him out of her way. That night, she found him standing alone on a balcony, looking up at the unfamiliar stars. For a moment, she paused and watched him. In the starlight, his face looked different, older, heavier, like a man carrying a great weight that no one else could see. "Are you lonely?" she asked, stepping onto the balcony. He turned to her with that gentle smile. "No, Your Majesty. I am used to being alone. You may call me Valara. We are married, after all." "Valara," he said, testing the name. "It is a beautiful name." She did not know how to respond to the compliment. The Keshan did not speak this way. They did not offer soft words and gentle smiles. They were warriors. They showed love through action, not poetry. "You are a strange man, Kang Teho," she said finally. "Yes," he agreed. "I suppose I am." They stood together in silence, watching the stars. And for the first time, Valara felt something she could not name. Not attraction, not respect, but something like curiosity. A question that formed in the back of her mind and refused to go away. Who are you, really? She would not find the answer for many months. But when she did, it would change everything. 3 months passed, and Kang Teho became a quiet fixture in the palace. He was always there, but never in the way. He attended the court functions as required, standing silently beside the queen while nobles discussed politics and war. He never spoke unless spoken to. He never demanded attention. He simply existed, like a piece of furniture that everyone had learned to ignore. The court continued to mock him. They whispered about the human gardener, the soft little man who spent his days growing flowers while the queen ruled an empire. Some of the younger nobles made jokes about human weakness. They laughed about how easy it would be to break the consort's thin human bones. Valara heard these jokes. She said nothing. Part of her still felt the same disappointment she had felt on the day they met. But another part of her, a part she did not fully understand, had begun to notice things. Strange things. Things that did not match the image of a simple gardener. The first thing she noticed was the way the palace guards treated him. The Keshan royal guards were elite warriors, proud and strong. They respected no one except proven fighters. Yet whenever Teho walked through the palace, they stepped aside. Not out of politeness, out of something that looked almost like instinct. Like a prey animal sensing a predator. When Valara asked the captain of the guard about this, he looked uncomfortable. "I do not know how to explain it, Your Majesty," he said. There is something about the way he moves, the way he watches a room. My soldiers feel it, even if they cannot name it. He is a diplomat, Valara said. A scholar. He grows flowers. The captain was silent for a moment. Yes, Your Majesty. Perhaps we are imagining things. But they were not imagining things. Valara began to watch her consort more carefully after that conversation. She noticed other strange details, his scars, for example. One evening, she passed his chambers and saw him through an open doorway. He was changing his robes, and for a brief moment, she saw his bare back. It was covered in old scars, deep ones, the kind that came from blades and burns and wounds that should have killed a man. He sensed her presence immediately. He turned, and for one heartbeat, his eyes were different, hard, cold, dangerous. Then the softness returned, and he was just Taeho again, smiling gently and asking if she needed anything. No, she said quickly. I was just passing by. She walked away, but she could not forget what she had seen. Those scars were not the marks of a scholar. Those scars were the marks of a warrior, someone who had fought in many battles, someone who had suffered and survived things that would have killed most men. Who are you, Kanteho? She began to ask questions. Carefully, quietly. She sent messages to her intelligence officers, requesting any information they could find about her consort's past. But the files were empty. His records had been sealed at the highest levels of the Human Federation. No one could access them. No one knew why. One night, Valara could not sleep. Her mind was too full of questions. She walked through the palace, seeking the peace of the dark corridors. And that was when she heard it, the sound of movement, fast, precise, coming from the training hall. The hall was supposed to be empty at this hour. The guards trained during the day, not in the middle of the night. Curious, Valara approached quietly and looked through the doorway. What she saw stopped her breath. Taeho was alone in the hall, moving through combat forms with terrifying speed and grace. He struck invisible enemies with his hands and feet, spinning and dodging and attacking in a blur of motion. His movements were not like anything she had seen before. They were not the elegant forms of Kashan martial arts. They were brutal, efficient, designed not for beauty, but for killing. He moved like a predator, like a machine of death. Each strike would have shattered bone. Each kick would have ended a life. And his face, usually so gentle and kind, was completely blank, empty. The face of a man who had killed so many times that death no longer meant anything. Then he stopped, suddenly, completely. He turned toward the doorway, and Valara knew she had been seen. She stepped into the light. I could not sleep, she said. Her voice was steady, but her hearts were racing. Taeho's expression softened. The coldness disappeared, and he was her gentle consort again. Neither could I, he said. Old habits. I used to exercise at night when I was younger. Those were not exercises. Those were combat forms. He was quiet for a moment. You are observant. I am a queen. It is my duty to observe. He walked to a small table where a pot of tea was waiting. He poured 2 cups and offered one to her. Would you like to join me? Valara accepted the cup. The tea was hot and fragrant, some human variety she did not recognize. They sat together on a bench by the wall, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Valara asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Who were you before you came here, Taeho? Before you became a diplomat? Before you became my consort? He stared into his tea. I was someone else, he said softly. Someone I do not like to remember? A soldier? Yes, a soldier. You have many scars. Yes, you move like a killer. He flinched at that word. Just a small flinch, barely visible. But she saw it. I was trained to fight, he admitted, from a very young age. But that life is behind me now. I retired. I wanted peace. I wanted to grow things instead of destroying them. Valara studied his face. She saw the pain there, hidden beneath the gentle mask. She saw the exhaustion, the weight of memories he could not escape. "Why did you agree to this marriage?" she asked. He looked at her then, and his eyes were honest, open. "Because I wanted a new life, a new purpose. I thought if I could serve you, if I could help bring peace between our peoples, then maybe all the terrible things I did would have some meaning." "What terrible things?" He smiled sadly. "Perhaps one day I will tell you, but not tonight. Tonight, I would just like to drink tea with my wife and pretend I am an ordinary man." Valara should have demanded answers. She was the queen. She had the right to know everything about the man she had married. But something in his voice, something in those tired eyes, made her stop. "Very well," she said. "We will drink tea." They sat together until the first light of dawn touched the sky. They did not speak much, but somehow the silence was comfortable. And when Valara finally returned to her chambers, she realized something had changed. She no longer saw Tejo as a disappointment. She saw him as a mystery, a puzzle she desperately wanted to solve. And deep in her chest, something that might have been affection began to grow. The attack came without warning. Valara was in her throne room, reviewing reports from the outer colonies when the first explosions shook the palace. The lights flickered. Alarms screamed through the corridors. And then the voice of her defense commander came through the communication system, filled with panic. "Your Majesty, the Vorath. They have dropped out of hyperspace above the capital. Hundreds of ships. We are under attack. The Vorath Dominion, ancient enemies of the Kishan. For centuries, the two empires had fought bitter wars over territory and resources. The peace between them had always been fragile, held together by fear and mutual exhaustion. But now, with the Kashan weakened by their war with the humans, the Vorath had seen an opportunity. Valara ran to the window. The sky above Kashan Prime was on fire. Vorath warships filled the heavens, their cannons raining destruction on the city below. Kashan defense platforms exploded one by one. The planetary shields were failing. "Where is my fleet?" Valara demanded. "Scattered across the sector, Your Majesty. Most of our ships are in the outer territories. We have only skeleton defenses here." It was a trap. The Vorath had waited for the perfect moment when the Kashan military was stretched thin, when the capital was vulnerable. And now they were striking with full force. "Evacuate the palace," Valara ordered. "Get the civilians to the underground shelters. All soldiers prepare to defend the throne room. Your Majesty, you should evacuate as well. If you fall, the Empire falls. I am not leaving my people." The next hour was chaos. Vorath dropships punched through the failing shields and landed in the palace grounds. Thousands of Vorath soldiers poured out, their black armor gleaming, their weapons spitting death. They were large creatures, taller even than the Kashan, with 4 arms and faces like angry insects. They were brutal, savage, and they showed no mercy. Valara fought alongside her guards. She was a queen, yes, but she was also a trained warrior. She carried the ceremonial sword of her ancestors, and she used it well. Vorath soldiers fell before her blade. But for everyone she killed, 3 more appeared. Slowly they were pushed back. The outer halls fell, then the inner corridors. The palace guards died one by one, giving their lives to protect their queen. And still the Vorath came, endless, unstoppable. "Fall back to the throne room," Valara shouted. "Form a defensive line." They retreated through the ancient halls, past paintings of forgotten kings and queens, past statues of heroes who had died for the Empire. The throne room was the most defensible position in the palace. If they could hold it, there was a chance. A small chance. But when they reached the throne room, Valara saw the truth. She had only 30 guards left. 30 against thousands. The odds were impossible. "Seal the doors," she commanded. The great doors closed and locked. For a few minutes, there was silence. Then the pounding started. The Varath were trying to break through. The doors were strong, reinforced with the hardest metals in the Empire. But they would not last forever. Valara looked at her remaining soldiers. They were wounded, exhausted, terrified. But not one of them ran. Not one of them begged for mercy. They stood ready to die for their queen. "It has been an honor," Valara said quietly. Then the doors exploded inward. Varath shock troops poured into the throne room like a black tide. The battle was short and brutal. One by one, the Cation guards fell. Valara fought with all her strength, her blade cutting through Varath's soldiers, but there were too many. A blow struck her from behind. Her sword flew from her hand. She fell to her knees. A Varath commander stepped forward. He was massive, even for his kind, with ceremonial markings on his armor that showed his high rank. In his upper hands, he held a curved blade, still dripping with Cation blood. "The great Queen Valara," he said, his voice a harsh clicking sound. "How the mighty have fallen. Your empire ends today. Your people will become slaves, and you will die on your knees, begging for mercy." Valara raised her head. Her eyes burned with defiance. "Cation queens do not beg." The commander laughed, a terrible sound like breaking bones. "Then you will die with dignity." A small comfort. He raised his blade, and then a voice spoke from behind him. A soft voice. A human voice. "Step away from my wife." The commander turned. So did Valara. And there, standing in the doorway, was Kang Taeho. He was still wearing his simple robes. He carried no weapon. He looked exactly as he always looked, calm, gentle, and completely out of place on a battlefield. The Vara soldiers stared at him. Then they started laughing. "A human?" The commander said. "A single human comes to save the queen? Has this galaxy gone mad?" Taeho walked forward slowly. His footsteps were silent. His hands hung loose at his sides. "I am going to ask you once," he said. "Leave this place. Take your soldiers and go. If you do this, you will live." The laughter grew louder. Even some of the dying Cation guards looked confused. "The human threatens us," the commander roared. "The little soft creature thinks he can fight the Varath. Someone kill him. Make it slow. I want to hear him scream." 3 Varath soldiers charged at Taeho. They never reached him. Valara did not see exactly what happened. One moment, the soldiers were attacking. The next moment, they were on the ground, their necks bent at impossible angles, their eyes empty. Taeho had not moved. Or rather, he had moved so fast that she could not see it. The throne room fell silent. Taeho looked at the commander. His face was still calm, but his eyes had changed. They were no longer kind. They were no longer gentle. They were cold, empty, the eyes of a predator. "I gave you a chance," he said softly. Then he moved. Valara had seen warriors fight her entire life. She had trained with the best fighters in the Cation Empire. She had watched battles that would make strong men weep. She had never seen anything like this. Taeho was not a man anymore. He was a force of nature. He flowed through the Vara soldiers like water through rocks. Every movement was lethal. Every strike was perfect. Bodies fell around him in waves. Blood sprayed through the air. Screams echoed off the ancient walls. The Vorath tried to fight back. They were elite soldiers, trained from birth for war. They had never lost a battle. They never even slowed him down. In less than 2 minutes. Every Vorath soldier in the throne room was dead. Every single one, except the commander. Tejo stood before him, surrounded by the bodies of his soldiers. His robes were still clean. Not a drop of blood had touched him. The commander raised his blade with shaking hands. "What are you?" he whispered. Tejo took one step forward. The commander attacked with all his strength, all four arms swinging his blade in a deadly arc. Tejo caught the blade with his bare hand. He squeezed. The metal shattered like glass. Then he put his palm on the commander's chest and pushed. The commander flew backward, crashed through the stone wall, and did not get up. The throne room was silent. Valara stared at her consort, her mouth open, her mind unable to process what she had just seen. Tejo turned to her. And just like that, the coldness was gone. His eyes were kind again, worried, human. "Are you hurt, my queen?" he asked softly. Valara could not speak. She could barely breathe. She just stared at the gentleman who had just killed 50 elite soldiers with his bare hands. "Who are you?" The question screamed in her mind louder than ever before. And this time, she knew she would get an answer. The battle for Keshan Prime continued for 6 more hours, but the tide had turned. When the Keshan reinforcement fleet finally arrived from the outer territories, they found something strange. The Vorath forces were retreating. Not in good order, but in panic. Ships fled in all directions, breaking formation, ignoring commands. Something had terrified them so badly that they no longer cared about victory. General Hansu, commander of the reinforcement fleet, landed at the palace expecting to find the queen dead and the capital burning. Instead, he found Valara standing in her throne room, surrounded by the bodies of dead Vorath soldiers, and beside her stood her human consort. "Your Majesty," Hansu said, his eyes moving across the carnage. "What happened here?" Valara looked at Tejo. He stood quietly, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression as gentle as always. There was no trace of the killing machine she had witnessed. He looked like a scholar again, a gardener, a man who wrote poetry and grew flowers. "The consort happened," Valara said simply. Hansu stared at the human. He had heard the court jokes, the mockery, the whispers about the soft little gardener the queen had married. Now he looked at the bodies on the floor, at the impossible destruction, and his mind could not make sense of it. "This is not possible," he whispered. In the hours that followed, the truth slowly emerged. Survivors began to tell their stories. Guards who had been wounded but not killed described what they had seen. Vorath prisoners, captured during the retreat, spoke of a demon in human form who had torn through their forces like a blade through paper. The numbers were staggering. During the battle, Tejo had killed over 200 Vorath soldiers. Not with weapons, not with armor or advanced technology. With his bare hands, Valara listened to report after report, and each one made the questions in her mind grow larger. She sat in the medical wing, getting her wounds treated, while officers came and went with new information. And through it all, Tejo sat in the corner, reading a book of earth poetry as if nothing had happened. Finally, the doctors left, and they were alone. "You saved my life," Valara said. Tejo looked up from his book. "Yes, you killed 200 soldiers by yourself. 217, I believe. I may have lost count near the end." Valara stood and walked toward him. Her body ached from her wounds, but she ignored the pain. "For months, you let the court mock you. You let them call you weak. You let them laugh at the human gardener who could not even lift a sword. And this whole time, you were—" She stopped, unable to find the right word. "A monster," Tejo said quietly. He closed his book. "That is the word you are looking for. I do not understand." Tejo was silent for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window. The city below was burning in places, rescue ships flying back and forth, the sounds of sirens filling the air. Humans are new to the galaxy, he said. Young, inexperienced. When we first ventured into space, we were exactly what everyone thought we were. Weak, fragile, easy to break. The galaxy learned otherwise, Valar said. Yes, because we were taught. 70 years ago, an alien species called the Zentari attacked Earth. They wanted our planet, our resources, our people. They thought we would surrender quickly. They thought we would beg for mercy. He turned to face her. They were wrong. Humans do not surrender. We do not beg. When pushed to the edge, we become something else. Something terrible. And during the war with the Zentari, our governments realized that normal soldiers would not be enough. We needed weapons that could match the strength and speed of alien warriors. We needed monsters of our own. Valara felt a chill run down her spine. What did they do? They created the Reaper Corps. They took children, young children with the right genetic potential, and they trained them, conditioned them, enhanced them with drugs and surgery and methods I do not like to remember. They turned us into perfect killing machines. Children? Valara whispered. I was 6 years old when they took me from my parents. I do not remember their faces. I do not remember my home. I only remember the training, the pain, the endless lessons in how to kill efficiently and without hesitation. His voice was flat, empty, like he was reading from a report instead of describing his own life. But Valara could see the pain beneath the surface, the old wounds that had never healed. For 30 years, I fought for humanity. I killed thousands, Zentari, pirates, rebels, anyone the Federation pointed me at. I was known as Ghost 7, one of the deadliest Reapers ever created. My kill count is classified, but I can tell you it would make you sick to know the number. He paused, and his eyes grew distant. Then one day, I woke up and realized I could not remember the last time I had felt anything. Joy, sadness, love, fear. I was empty inside. A weapon with no purpose except to destroy. I looked in the mirror and did not recognize the man looking back at me. So you retired, Valara said. I asked to be released. It took years of negotiation. The Reaper Corps does not like to lose assets. But eventually, they agreed. I was given a new identity, a small pension, and a promise that I would be left alone. I bought a house on a quiet planet. I planted a garden. I read books. I tried to remember what it felt like to be human. He smiled sadly. Then your peace treaty came along. The Federation needed someone to send as a consort. Someone unimportant. Someone they could afford to lose. A retired Reaper with no family, no connections, no value. I was perfect for the role. Valara shook her head. They sent you thinking you would be decoration, a symbol and nothing more. They sent me hoping I would finally die somewhere far away. Ghost 7 was an embarrassment to them, a reminder of what they had to become during the war. They wanted to forget, but you agreed to come. Yes, because I saw an opportunity, a chance to be useful again, but in a different way. Not as a weapon, as a bridge. If I could help build peace between humans and Keshen, if I could use my last years for something good, then maybe all the death would have meaning. He looked at her with those tired, ancient eyes. I did not plan to fight again. I did not want to. But when I saw that Varth commander standing over you, when I saw him about to kill you, something broke inside me. The monster woke up, and I could not stop it. Valara stepped closer to him. For the first time, she truly saw him. Not the gentle gardener, not the quiet scholar, not even the terrifying killer. She saw all of it together. A man who had been turned into a weapon as a child, who had spent his whole life dealing death, and who wanted nothing more than to be ordinary, to be gentle, to be human. "You are not a monster," she said softly. He laughed bitterly. "You did not see what I did out there. The things I felt. The pleasure I took in killing them. I was trained too well. The monster will always be inside me." "Then perhaps I married a monster," Valara said. "But that monster saved my life. Saved my people. That monster fought for the Keshin when he had no obligation to do so. That is not evil. That is sacrifice." Teho stared at her. Something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like hope. "I do not deserve your kindness," he said. Valara reached out and took his hand. It was warm, human, the hand of a killer and a poet, a monster and a gentle soul. "Let me decide what you deserve," she said, and for the first time since she had known him, Kang Teho had no words. He simply stood there, holding his queen's hand as tears ran silently down his face. Word spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within days, every major news network was reporting the same impossible story. The Varath Dominion, one of the most feared military powers in known space, had attacked Cation Prime with overwhelming force. They had breached the palace. They had cornered the queen. Victory was certain, and then a single human had stopped them. The recordings from the palace. Security systems were leaked somehow. Valara suspected rival factions within her own government, seeking to cause chaos. But the result was undeniable. The entire galaxy watched as a small, quiet human tore through elite Varath shock troops like they were children. They watched him catch a blade with his bare hand and shatter it. They watched him kill without mercy, without hesitation, without even breathing hard. "Go 7, the news channels whispered. "The Reaper. The demon of Earth." Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about the Reaper course. Historians dug through old archives. Intelligence agencies released classified files. Former soldiers gave interviews. And piece by piece, the truth emerged. During the Human-Zentari War, humanity had faced extinction. The Zentari were stronger, faster, more advanced. Normal human soldiers died in waves, unable to match their alien enemies. In desperation, the human governments had authorized a secret program. They took thousands of children with the right genetic potential and subjected them to brutal training and enhancement. Most died. Those who survived became the Reapers. The Reapers turned the tide of the war. They infiltrated Zentari bases and killed everyone inside. They assassinated enemy commanders. They terrorized the alien forces so badly that soldiers refused to fight. Within 10 years, the Zentari Empire had collapsed. Destroyed not by armies, but by a few hundred modified humans who moved like ghosts and killed like demons. Then came the peace. And the Reapers became an embarrassment. What do you do with weapons designed for war when war is over? You hide them. You pretend they never existed. You hope they quietly fade away. Kang Teho was one of the last surviving Reapers. And now the entire galaxy knew his name. In the weeks following the attack, Valara's palace became the center of galactic attention. Diplomats arrived from every major power. Some wanted to offer alliances. Others wanted to study the human Reaper. A few quietly suggested that perhaps Teho should be handed over for examination. Valara refused all requests with cold fury. "He is my consort," she told the assembly of diplomats. "He is under the protection of the Kishan crown. Anyone who threatens him threatens me." The diplomats backed down, but the tension remained. Teho had become too valuable, too dangerous. Some wanted to use him as a weapon. Others wanted to destroy him before he could be used against them. And through it all, Teho continued to tend his garden. Valara found him there one evening, kneeling in the dirt, carefully pruning a small flowering bush. His hands, which had killed so many, moved with gentle precision. His face was peaceful, almost content. "You should be inside," she said. "It is not safe out here." "I know," he replied without looking up. "But the flowers do not care about politics. They just want sunlight and water. I find that comforting." She sat down on a bench nearby and watched him work. In the fading light, he looked so ordinary, so human. It was hard to believe this was the same man who had single-handedly defeated an invasion force. "The Varath Dominion has declared you their primary enemy," she said. "They are mobilizing their full armada. They say they will not rest until you are dead." Teho nodded calmly. "I expected that. They are not the only ones. Half the galaxy is afraid of you now. They think you are some kind of unstoppable monster." He paused in his work and looked at her. "Am I wrong to say that you were also afraid? When you first saw what I could do?" Valara considered the question carefully. "Yes," she admitted. "For a moment, I was terrified. I saw something in your eyes that was not human. Something cold and empty. The killing mind," Teho said. "That is what we called it. When we fight, we shut down everything else. Emotions, doubts, mercy. We become pure function. Pure death. Can you control it?" "Most of the time. But when someone I care about is threatened..." He trailed off, then shook his head. "I lost control when I saw you in danger. I did not think. I just acted. The monster took over, and I did not try to stop it." Valara stood and walked to him. She knelt beside him in the dirt, ignoring the way it stained her royal robes. "You call yourself a monster, but monsters do not plant gardens. They do not read poetry. They do not cry when someone shows them kindness. Perhaps I am a monster who wishes he was a man. Or perhaps you are a man who was forced to become a monster. And now you are finding your way back." He stared at her for a long moment. Then a small smile touched his lips. "You are very kind to me, Valara. I do not understand why. Because you saved my life. Because you are my husband. Because..." She hesitated, then continued. "Because when I look at you, I see someone worth saving." Teho looked away, but she saw the emotion in his eyes. The hope, the fear, the desperate longing to believe her words. "The War Council meets tomorrow," Valara said, changing the subject. "They want to discuss strategy. The Varath Armada will reach our borders within a month. They want me to fight. Yes, some of them. Others want to send you away, hide you somewhere the Varath cannot find you. What do you want?" Valara took his hand. His fingers were covered in dirt, but she did not mind. "I want you to have a choice. For the first time in your life, I want you to decide what you want, not what others want for you." Teho was silent for a long time. The sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The flowers in his garden swayed gently in the evening breeze. Finally, he spoke. "When I was young, they took away my choices. They made me into a weapon and pointed me at their enemies. I hated them for it. I still hate them. But I also understand why they did it. Humanity was dying. They were desperate. They did terrible things to save their species." He looked at her, and his eyes were clear, determined. Now the Keshan face a similar threat. The Varath will not stop. They will keep coming until your empire falls. Your people will die. Your culture will be destroyed. Everything you love will burn. "I know," Valara said quietly. "I swore I would never fight again. I wanted to be free of death, free of blood, free of the monster inside me." He squeezed her hand. "But I cannot stand by and watch you die. I cannot watch your people suffer when I have the power to stop it. You would fight for us?" "I would fight for you," he said simply. "You are my wife, my queen, The first person in a very long time who has looked at me and seen something worth saving. If fighting means protecting you, then I will fight. I will become the monster again." Valara felt tears prick her eyes. She had never expected this. When she had married Tejo, she had expected a political symbol, nothing more. She had never expected to find a partner, a protector, someone who would face the entire galaxy to keep her safe. "You are a fool," she whispered. "Yes," he agreed. "But I am your fool." She laughed despite herself, a sound that mixed with her tears. Then she leaned forward and kissed him, there in the garden, surrounded by flowers and fading light. It was their first real kiss. And it tasted like hope. The War Council chamber was filled with tension. Around the great circular table sat the most powerful figures in the Keshan Empire. Generals in ceremonial armor, governors of distant worlds, admirals who commanded fleets of thousands of ships. They had come to decide the fate of their civilization. At the head of the table sat Queen Valara, dressed in the silver and blue of her royal house. Beside her, in a simple chair without decoration, sat Kang Taiho. The whispers had stopped. No one mocked the human consort anymore. After the recordings from the palace invasion had spread across the galaxy, mockery had transformed into fear. Now the nobles looked at Tejo with careful eyes, watching him the way one watches a sleeping predator. General Hansu stood and activated the holographic display in the center of the table. A map of the sector appeared, showing the positions of ships and planets. "The situation is dire, Your Majesty," he began. "The Varath Dominion has committed their entire military to this campaign. We are facing over 8,000 warships, 3 million ground troops, and their full fleet of planetary bombardment vessels." Murmurs ran through the council. 8,000 ships. It was an impossible number. "Our own forces number approximately 2,000 ships," Hansu continued. "Even with the reinforcements we have called from the outer territories, we cannot match them in direct battle." "Then what do you propose?" asked Lord Baron, his old face creased with worry. "Surrender?" "Never," Valara said sharply. "The Keshan do not surrender." "Then we will die," said Admiral Yunhee, a stern woman with scars across her face. "The mathematics are simple. We cannot win a conventional war." Silence fell over the council. Then Tejo spoke. "May I?" he asked quietly. Valara nodded. "The council recognizes the royal consort." Tejo stood and walked to the holographic display. He studied the map for a moment, his eyes moving across the positions of ships and planets. "You are thinking like traditional warriors," he said. "You see a large army and assume the only way to defeat it is with an equally large army. But that is not the only way." "Enlighten us," General Hansu said, his tone skeptical but not dismissive. "The Varath are confident. They believe they have overwhelming force. They believe nothing can stop them. This confidence is their weakness." Tejo touched the display, zooming in on the Varath formation. Their armada is moving as a single mass. They keep their flagship at the center, protected by layers of escort ships. The Varath High Warlord, Thrakva, commands from that flagship. He will not lead from the front. He considers himself too important to risk in direct combat. "So?" asked Admiral Yunhee. "The flagship is the most protected vessel in their fleet. We could throw our entire force at it and never break through." "You could not," Tejo agreed. "But I could." The council erupted in confused murmurs. "Explain," Valara said. Tejo turned to face the council. His expression was calm, but his eyes held a cold light that made some of the nobles look away. "The Reapers were trained for exactly this kind of mission. We specialized in impossible objectives. High-security targets. Decapitation strikes. We would infiltrate enemy strongholds, eliminate leadership, and escape before anyone knew we were there. You are suggesting a single-man assault on the Vorath flagship? General Hansu asked. I am suggesting a strike team. Small, fast, and deadly. We slip through their defenses while your fleet distracts them with a frontal assault. We board the flagship, eliminate the High Warlord, and destroy their command structure. Without Thrak Vioar, the Vorath will fall into chaos. Their coalition will break apart. That is suicide, Admiral Yunhee said flatly. Perhaps. But it is also our best chance. Lord Baron leaned forward. Even if you reached the flagship, you would face thousands of Vorath soldiers. The ship is a fortress. You cannot fight through all of them. Teho smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. With respect, my lord, you do not understand what I am, what I was made to be. I have done missions like this before. I have killed my way through impossible defenses. I have faced worse odds and survived. You were younger then, said a noble from the back of the room. You are an old man now. I am 43 years old. For a Reaper, that is still prime fighting age. Our enhancements keep us combat ready well into our 60s. Teho paused. I am slower than I was. Less flexible. But I am still more dangerous than any soldier in this room. Valara watched the council absorb his words. She could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. They did not trust humans. They barely trusted Teho. But they were also desperate. The numbers were impossible. Without something extraordinary, the Keshan Empire would fall. And if you fail? General Hansu asked. Then you are no worse off than you were before. I am one man. My death changes nothing in the larger battle. Your death changes everything for me, Valara said quietly. The council fell silent. All eyes turned to the queen. Valara stood and walked to stand beside her consort. I did not expect to care for this man when I married him. He was a symbol, nothing more. A political necessity. She looked at Teho, and her expression softened. But he has proven himself more loyal, more brave, and more honorable than any noble in this empire. He risked his life to save mine. He did not ask for reward or recognition. He did it because he believes in peace, in unity, in a future where our peoples can stand together. She turned back to the council. I will not order him to go on this mission. I cannot. He is not my soldier. He is my husband. But if he chooses to go, I will support him with every resource at my command. The council members exchanged glances. Lord Baron spoke first. The queen speaks wisdom. We have no right to demand sacrifice from the consort. But if he volunteers... He trailed off meaningfully. One by one, the council members nodded their agreement. Then it is decided, Valara said. The consort will lead a strike team to the Vorath flagship. General Hansu, you will coordinate the distraction force. Admiral Yunhee, you will command the fleet. And you, your majesty? Asked Lord Baron. Valara raised her chin. I will be on the flagship with my husband. The council exploded in protest. Your majesty, that is unacceptable. The queen cannot risk herself in such a manner. If you fall, the empire falls with you. Teho raised his hand, and somehow the council fell silent. He turned to Valara, and his eyes were gentle. You cannot come with me, he said softly. You know this. I know that I cannot sit here while you fight my battles for me. It is not about fighting. It is about leadership. Your people need you here. They need to see their queen standing strong, commanding the defense. If you die on some desperate mission, they will lose hope. And if you die? Teho cupped her face in his hands. Then I die protecting the woman I love. And that is a death I can accept. Valara felt tears threaten to spill down her cheeks. She had known this moment would come. She had known he would insist on going alone. But knowing did not make it easier. Promise me you will come back, she whispered. I cannot promise that. Then promise me you will try, that you will fight with everything you have to return to me. Teho kissed her forehead gently. That I can promise. I will fight. I will survive. And I will come back to you, Valara, because you are the first good thing I have found in a lifetime of darkness. And I am not ready to lose that. The council watched in silence as their queen and her human consort held each other. Nobles who had once laughed at the gardener now saw something else entirely. They saw love. They saw sacrifice. They saw a partnership stronger than any political alliance. And in that moment, they began to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, they might actually win. The battle for Cation Prime began at dawn. From the observation deck of her command ship, Valara watched the Vorath armada emerge from hyperspace. 8,000 warships filled the sky like a swarm of angry insects. Their formations were perfect, their weapons charged, their intent clear. They had come to end the Keshan Empire once and for all. All ships engage defensive formation, Admiral Yanhi commanded. Draw them toward the asteroid belt. Give the strike team time to reach the flagship. The Keshan fleet surged forward to meet the enemy. 2,000 ships against 8,000. It was a desperate gamble. A delaying action meant to buy precious minutes for a single shuttle carrying a single man. Valara gripped the railing of the observation deck and prayed to gods she barely believed in. Somewhere out there, in a small, unmarked shuttle, Kang Teho was racing toward the heart of the enemy armada. He had refused to take a team. More people means more chances to be detected, he had explained. I work better alone. She had argued. She had demanded. She had even threatened to forbid him from going. But in the end, she had let him go, because she knew he was right. This was what he had been made for. This was the only way. The first hour of the battle was chaos. Keshan ships fell by the dozens, overwhelmed by superior numbers. But they fought with desperate courage, refusing to retreat, refusing to surrender. They knew what was at stake. They knew they were buying time for something important, even if most of them did not know exactly what. Then the reports started coming in. Your Majesty. A communications officer ran toward her, his eyes wide. We are receiving transmissions from inside the Vorath flagship. Someone has breached their security network. Valara's heart leaped. Show me. The officer activated a holographic display, and suddenly the observation deck was filled with images from inside the enemy vessel. Security cameras showed corridors filled with dead Vorath soldiers. Armored bodies lay everywhere, their weapons unfired. Their deaths coming too fast for them to even react, and moving through the carnage, calm and unstoppable, was Te-Hodad. He had traded his simple robes for combat armor taken from a fallen Vorath soldier. In his hands, he held 2 alien blades, spinning them with casual grace as he advanced deeper into the ship. His movements were fluid, almost beautiful, each strike precise and lethal. How is this possible? Admiral Yunhee whispered. One man against an entire warship? He is not a man, Valara said softly. He is something more. The transmission continued to broadcast across the Keshan fleet. Soldiers who had been fighting in despair suddenly found new strength. They watched the human legend cutting through their enemies, and they believed. They believed in victory. They believed in hope that the Vorath High Command responded with panic. They pulled ships from the battle line to reinforce their flagship. They sent their elite guard, their best warriors, their champions. And one by one, Teho killed them all. 30 minutes into his assault, he reached the bridge. Thrak-Vor, High Warlord of the Vorath Dominion, waited for him there. He was massive, even for his kind, a mountain of muscle and armor surrounded by his personal guard. In his 4 hands, he held ceremonial blades that had killed 100 enemies. So you are the human demon, Thrakvora growled. I expected something more impressive. Teho stood in the doorway, breathing steadily, his borrowed blades dripping with purple Varath blood. You should have stayed home, arrogant creature. I have killed thousands of warriors. I have conquered dozens of worlds. You are nothing but a pest, a nuisance, a brief entertainment before my victory. Then come and be entertained. Thrakvora charged with a roar that shook the walls. His four blades spun in deadly patterns, each one capable of cutting through starship armor. He was fast for his size, brutal in his technique, confident in his superiority. The duel lasted exactly 17 seconds. Teho moved like water flowing around stone. He dodged the massive blades by inches, slipping through openings that should not have existed. He struck precisely, targeting joints and weak points in the warlord's armor. Each cut was shallow but calculated, weakening his enemy piece by piece. Thrakvora grew slower. His movements became clumsy. Blood seeped from a dozen wounds. He could not understand how this small human was defeating him. He could not accept it. What are you? He snarled. I am Ghost 7, Teho said quietly. I am what humanity became when the galaxy tried to destroy us. I am proof that the smallest species can become the most dangerous. He moved one final time. His blade found the gap between Thrakvora's helmet and armor. The warlord's eyes went wide. Then he fell. The bridge erupted in chaos. Varath officers tried to flee, to fight, to surrender. Teho killed those who resisted and ignored those who did not. He walked to the ship's main console and began entering commands. Across the battlefield, every Varath ship received the same message. The High Warlord was dead. The command structure was broken. The war was over. The effect was immediate. Varath ships began to withdraw, their formations dissolving into panic. Cation forces pursued, destroying stragglers, capturing surrendering vessels. What had seemed like certain defeat became an unexpected victory, but Valara did not celebrate. Her eyes were fixed on the holographic display, watching Teho on the bridge of the enemy flagship. He was wounded now. She could see blood on his armor, his movement slower than before. Get him out of there, she commanded. Send a rescue shuttle immediately. Your Majesty, the flagship is losing power. Internal fires are spreading. We may not reach him in time. I do not care about the odds. Bring him home. The next hour was the longest of Valara's life. She paced the observation deck, snapping at anyone who tried to speak to her, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. The rescue shuttle raced toward the dying Varath flagship, dodging debris and enemy fire. When the shuttle finally docked with her command ship, Valara ran through the corridors like a common soldier, ignoring the shocked looks of her crew. She burst into the medical bay and stopped. Teho lay on a treatment bed, surrounded by doctors. His armor had been removed, revealing a body covered in wounds, burns, cuts, broken bones. He looked more dead than alive, but when he saw her, he smiled. I told you I would come back, he said weakly. Valara took his hand and held it tight. Tears streamed down her silver face. You fool. You absolute fool. You nearly died. Nearly is not completely. You are impossible. I learned from my wife. The doctors worked frantically, using every advanced technique the Kashan possessed. The wounds were severe, but Teho's enhanced body was already beginning to heal. Within hours, he was stable. Within days, he was sitting up in bed, complaining about the hospital food. The galaxy watched in amazement as the story spread. A single human had destroyed the Varath war machine. A single man had saved an empire. The legend of Ghost 7, which had been a whisper, became a shout. And everyone understood the message. Humans were not to be underestimated. 3 months later, Valara stood in the rebuilt throne room of her palace. Beside her stood Taiho, fully recovered, wearing the formal robes of a Keshan royal consort. But now those robes carried new decorations, medals and honors bestowed by a grateful empire. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Leaders from 100 worlds watched as Valara addressed her people. "Today, we celebrate victory," she said. "But we also celebrate something greater. We celebrate the bond between the Keshan Empire and the Human Federation. A bond forged not in politics, but in blood and sacrifice." She turned to Taiho and took his hand. "I did not choose this man. He was given to me as part of a treaty, a symbol of peace. I expected a politician, a scholar, perhaps even a spy." She smiled. "I did not expect a hero." Taiho looked uncomfortable with the attention, but he did not pull away. "My husband has taught me many things," Valara continued. "He taught me that strength is not only about power. It is about courage, about sacrifice, about the willingness to fight for those you love, even when victory seems impossible." She faced the cameras, her voice strong and clear. "The humans call themselves young, new to the galaxy. But do not be fooled by their words. Within every human beats a heart of incredible strength. When pushed to the edge, they become something extraordinary. They become legends." She raised Taiho's hand in hers. "I married a legend, and I could not be prouder." The throne room erupted in cheers. Across the galaxy, humans and Keshan celebrated together. And in the center of it all, a quiet man who had only ever wanted to be ordinary stood beside his queen and finally allowed himself to feel something he had not felt in decades. Peace. True peace. That night, Valara found him in his garden, as she always did. He was planting new seeds by starlight, his movements gentle and careful. "You could be inside celebrating," she said. "I prefer it out here. The flowers do not ask for speeches." She laughed and sat beside him. "What will you do now? You are the most famous human in the galaxy. Everyone knows your name. I will keep planting my garden. I will keep reading my poetry. I will keep loving my wife." He looked at her with those kind, tired eyes. "I have been a weapon my entire life. Now I want to be a husband, a partner, perhaps one day, a father." Valara felt her heart swell. "A father? If you would want that." Keshan and human biology are compatible, or so the scientists say. Our children would be something new, something wonderful.